So we look at the religions of the world, and that includes secular religion too, belief in no God and worship of what seems to present as rationality. And we find all these religious beliefs, all these belief systems are wanting, tragically lacking in the obvious, quite honestly. They're lacking in what we have come to value. We might not have had perfect mum and dad, but we certainly value good mums and dads. And we can't imagine life without parents at some level, at some point, if not only just in our conception. We can't imagine life that's simply born of itself. Our experiences of that which is truly of value is something to do with that which is truly of family. And we're not happy when we find we're isolated. We're not happy when we find fellowship is disintegrating. So we have an understanding that the fullness of life is something to do with a good relationship with other people of similar needs and values. We don't need some incredible intellect like my own to arrive at that conclusion. I don't mean we hold intellect at contempt, because it does seem that we need some level of intellect to unravel the frightening philosophies and religions that we seem to have created. But we need an experience of life that leads us in the right direction. And that's what good upbringing is. We're not sure what that is, and we've tried a million types of religion to check it out. Most of such paths can be rejected on the grounds that they don't constitute loving kindness. They don't actually prioritize the eternal sustaining of what we truly value, what we truly find life and joy and hope and goodness and life in. And if they're found to be wanting, well, it's best to put them aside and return to, well, quite honestly, return to what then seems pretty obvious. So, Jesus says, I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And then in praying to God in John 17, he says, this is life eternal, that they might know thee. And says, I've given them your name. I've finished the work that you've given me to do. And that name, the only name he uses, is Father. It's an incredibly, unbelievably simple message. And quite honestly, man, his intellect has mangled it, but it's not because of his intellect. It's in spite of his intellect. He has this most incredible intellect and can't see the obvious. He can't see the obvious because, of course, He's misunderstood what goodness and life and purity and joy is, and substituted dominance of priority of preference for self over all other selves, an acute selfishness that has resulted in these ghastly authoritarian regimes that trample on each other to the vain glory of such individuals as rise to the surface and then are no more. Poor players that strut and fret their hour upon the stage, and then are heard no more. A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Well, that's not to take a very sympathetic view. The tragedy is that we're talking about ourselves. So, we learn that an acute selfishness in this world is disastrous. Very quickly. The result is we swing to a conformity that will deny anything to have friendship, prestige, wealth, power, position. And that's a disaster. And we should learn quickly that that's a disaster and avoid it. It doesn't mean to say we throw out the pursuit of joy and goodness and life and peace and hope and the future and the past and shut our eyes to everything in case it hurts us. That's not life, that's death. And we don't want it. And we don't choose it. The people of the world have reviled these religions. They've been controlled by them, dominated by them. The religions have been used against them by those that are more corrupt than they believe. Storm gods and gods of war, primitive views of God, used to constrain and manipulate, keep the status quo, keep the inequalities at the cost of those that suffer. They all suffer in the end, of course, because it's not the way. Even the leaders, they all suffer. They suffer in different ways, but they all suffer. In Hindu terms, they all suffer from the sin of self. In Christian terms, they all suffer from sin. They suffer in not giving God the glory. In other words, they haven't glorified that which is truly of value. What's the essence of God? Is the personification of what's truly of value. He is that. That's what we value. We value something that's consistent with our life, or our life would not exist. And if it's to exist eternally, we must value that which is consistent with living eternally, namely peace and kindness, forgiveness, compassion, understanding, goodness, hope, purity, all the things of God. It's our God. You could say it's God made in our own image. That's reliable if you get our image right. If you get our image wrong, you end up with the religions of the world, and they're frightening. They're just frightening. And by that I mean the belief systems of the world. You know, the belief system of pure science and rationality is frightening. Just as bad as any of the tyrannies of old. You know, Catholicism or Hinduism or anything else. It's amazing what good can turn out to be in the hands of the incompetent children. And if you give them free run, wow, it's frightening. So we surrender freedom in large measure. We surrender it, but we surrender it to good hands. And we wouldn't surrender it to any other. We will only surrender it to what we see as perfect parent. Our Heavenly Father, if you like. Divine Mother, if that's your view, well, fair enough. I follow Jesus. Man, you're right. I follow my view of Jesus. Which, well, we all have a unique relationship to God. Because we are all unique. So we see God from a different point of view. But not radically different. After all, we're all born of God. We all value life eternal. And we all value it with each other. We don't want to reject each other. We just that, we want each other on harmonious terms. Good. Lovely. That's the way to go. Thank you, Heavenly Father. So we might want another cake, and Mum says no. All right. Okay. I might ask again because I really would like it. But if she says no, well, that's all right. I won't keep pressing. Why? Because I trust her. Why? Because, well, she's my mum, isn't she? Which means I have some notion in my mind that she pursues my welfare far more competently than me. Because I don't stress about it. And I don't whinge and whine if I'm a good boy. Because, well, got it right, haven't I? Her solution's better than mine. And I delight in her company. We're like that with our Heavenly Father. We delight in His company. We have the understanding that He dwells in us. In fact, some of us have the understanding that our very being is in His hands always. My view is a bit more than that our very being is made up of His thoughts, that we're the product of His continual loving thoughts. We are. Our existence is the thought of us in His mind, so to speak. I don't mean I've pinned it down to some separate reality to God, but I mean it's meaningful in that way, given our experience. And that even our thoughts are His thoughts, and the access to His thoughts we have depends on who we are, what our values and motivations are. We shift to something in harmony with God, more in harmony. We receive access to more of God's mind, if you like. astonishing competence, miraculous, wonderful. But not to be preoccupied with such. For the joy and happiness is in simply knowing God and seeing God in the rest of the family, if you like. In fact, seeing God in everything, all of his creation. In that sense, I think the Hindus got it right, all is God. It's just that nobody understood what it was. I think it's the case that devotion in any of the great belief systems, religions, including the secular religion of science, I think that devotion in any of them does get the individual onto the right path. But that doesn't mean to say that the organisation and structure that supposedly represents them is the way by any means. Well, it really is not the way. But you can find the way by being devoted within such. Access to heaven is not denied to anybody. We have a wonderful God who loves his children, doesn't reject some, has no favourites, loves us. When we sing, my soul longs for you, my soul longs for you, nothing else will do. He also sings it to us, not just us to him. And when we sing, your presence is heaven to me, your presence is heaven to me, he sings it back to us, because he loves his family. That's who he is.